Namaskar and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology Debunking Mythology. Today we are going to talk about how we draw inferences from earlier evidences. And then it is called Anuman Praman and also due diligence, also you can say due diligence, because without due diligence you cannot arrive. And there is so much uh, forced belief system in other evidences people produce that it actually defies the logic. But the Vedic concept of Poorvapaksh is extremely important. The prior evidences, the prior due diligence, and that's how you arrive at a proper understanding. So without delay, I have a great friend, Muni Rishi, whatever you call him, but a great thinker and a very good researcher. And without delay, let us welcome him, Shri Nilesh Neelkant Oak.
Namaskar, Aditya ji.
Namaskar, namaskar. Always a pleasure to to see you and hear from you. So, Purva
Same here.
Paksha, did I say anything wrong there or miss out anything?
No, you didn't say anything wrong. You mentioned about how we different pramanas that we use, and that is also part of it. But it's not so much. So we have to find out what pramanas people used, and sometimes they will not use the right pramana. But Purva Paksha, I mean, I'll go through the slides and mention, which is to say, put yourself into the shoes of the other person. Okay, someone that you may partially agree with that person's position, you may not agree with that person's position. Many times you may completely disagree with that person's position, but put yourself into that person's shoes and almost think what he or she was thinking, what was her or his method, how they arrived at that particular conclusion, and do it in a such a fashion that even that person should say that, wow, this person did a better job of representing my position than even I did or I would have done. So that is how one should study the other side very well, and not on your terms. You first study on their terms, and then of course, because you either don't agree with it 100% or you only partly agree, and you also note down what you agree with and why, and then you also explain why you disagree and why, and then you have to produce a better solution to the same problem. That is very important. Otherwise it becomes a vitanda, it becomes a cavil, it becomes like an undesirable situation. So that's what um, Purva Paksha is in short.
So without Purva Paksha, actually, it doesn't make any sense because you have not done proper analysis of it.
Right. And what you'll find is many people just, I mean, that's true everywhere. And I'm going to share today as an example all the different claims for the year of Mahabharat war. And what you'll find is majority actually do not even understand this basic concept of Purva Paksha, what to speak of they actually doing it. And so we will look at all the claims, we will see how broadly we can classify them, and that is where we will stop today. But the idea is this can turn into a wonderful series where we will every time take a few claims. I mean, there are 130 plus claims, and we are not going to go through 130. And actually, we don't need to, because many of them can be nicely grouped together into a category. But we may take few representative claims from each of the quadrants, and we will analyze them. That's something we will do as a serial, okay,
Yeah.
as a series. So, can I start sharing
Yes,
the
yes,
slides?
please.
Okay. All right. So reviving the tradition of Purva because frankly, it is lost everywhere. Now, directionally, I would say in academia, it is known, it is understood. What we may generically call a review paper. At least that's what I'm familiar with in the engineering field, or engineering slash science technology, you can say. So before we presenting our own work or new work, we would look at what is being done in that particular area, and that usually turns it into a review paper that shows that one has a good grasp of what is been already done, and that is also Purvapaksha. So that's not a bad definition. The review paper is not exactly Purvapaksha, but it comes very close if done well. So in the Indian tradition, the very recent example would be that of, and when I say very recent, it's not that recent, which also means in some sense we lost this tradition of Purvapaksha for a while, at least for last 400, 500 years, we definitely lost it. And what I'm showing you here is the picture of the debate, a painting of a debate uh, between Adi Shankaracharya and Mandana Mishra, and in between the jury, you can say, the judge is actually the wife of Mandan Mishra, okay, who is going to make a distinction, I mean, who is going to make the final judgment. What is interesting is one of the key principle in Purva Paksha is this aspect of integrity. You, all the parties involved, they may have different positions, but they are doing it truly to find the Sat, truly in search of the truth, truly to find the best approximation to the truth. Now, how do we ensure that? Well, that's a challenging point, because people come with all kinds of biases, all kinds of agendas. However, that's why the Purvapaksha position has a value. Now, today I thought of talking about it. I mean, it was always on my mind, and at some point we would have done it anyways. But this morning, the Indic Academy, and then there is one small wing called Indic Book Club. They announced a Purvapakshin Review Club, which is to say, if anyone from academia or anyone is, or even a public intellectual, researcher, scholar, whatnot, or anyone for that matter, if they want to if they have a position which is in contrast to somebody else who has done a good work, they will send that book to this individual who is interested, if he or she requests it, and then that person's job is to do a good Purva Paksha, and Purva Paksha, after that you can give a rebuttal. Okay, so that's what they started right this morning. I mean, I got that email, so I thought that would be a perfect timing, for example. So the idea behind what they are initiating is that they say our civilizational thought has had a long history of debates, which is very true, especially the concept of Purvapaksha, requiring a thorough understanding of the opponent's view before criticizing the same. The understanding has to be so thorough that even the opponent should able to give you a certificate saying, yeah, I'm completely at satisfaction with what you said. That's exactly what I mean. In fact, you said it better than I would ever have. That's the kind of thorough Purvapaksha, or that's the kind of thorough understanding is required of the opposite side. And in the recent times, and if Professor Clooney is there, then he knows Rajiv Malhotra ji well. In the recent times, Rajiv Malhotra has revived this tradition through his books and discourses. For example, we know the book Being Different, but also the Battle for Sanskrit Studies, and many books. Most of them, if not in 100% Purvapaksha style, they are close to a Purvapaksha style, looking at many of the Indologists and their points of view, especially Western Indologists, but also their counterparts, their followers in India in the last 100, 200 years or so. And this initiative, essentially the idea is to encourage rebuttals, okay, backed with research, rigor, and respect, which Rajivji does very well, by the way. But not all of us are equally trained in it, because we have lost this tradition. All right. And so the initiative is dedicated to Rajiv Malhotraji, rightfully so. Okay. So what is the Purva Paksha? It literally means opponent's argument. It literally means the former argument. And something that Aditya you can relate to, or you would have heard in Jnaneshwar, 13th century Maharashtrian
Correct.
saint. He wrote Jnaneshwari, of course, many people know that. But he also wrote something called Amrutanubhav, which is an amazing text, very bit
Amen.
esoteric text. And when I was young and I was reading it, And so he first talk about the Jnana Nirupan, then Ajnana Nirupan, and he goes Shabda Nirupan, the importance of the word, importance of the language, importance of knowledge, importance of ignorance. And then initially he starts talking about how this is important,
Mm.
how the word is important, how it helps in communication. And almost like you are convinced that yes, without this you cannot do it. And then he starts the Uttara Paksha, you can say, rebuttal, and he just one argument after another goes on to explain why that is not complete, why that is not required. So something I was fascinating. I mean, I didn't know this, and I said, wow, he's praising it, and now suddenly what happened right in the middle of the chapter, so to say, so it's truly understanding other person's side first. Okay, it's a tradition in the debates of Indian logicians. It involves building a deep familiarity with the opponent's point of view before criticizing it. And I showed the picture between Adi Shankara and Mandana Mishra, the debate going on, as well as Ramanuja, and all our saints did that. You would know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and who is that, Kazi, right? The about the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, right? They both discussing it. That is exactly this position. And if you remember, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was quoting from a Quran or something like this to convince the Qazi, is it not? Like
Yes.
knowing the other side very well, right? And so in ancient jurisprudence, that's what it is. First, you present the opposite side, and then you give the response. Okay. And again, there are certain rules, like rules of a Nyaya Darshana, rules of Shad Darshanas that needs to be followed. So, in the context of if you take the Mahabharata research, and this can be applied for anything, I specifically chose Mahabharata. We will also do for Ramayana at some point. But Mahabharata, because there are so many, and it is so important for the true understanding of the chronology of Indian civilization, because it has been absolutely distorted. It is twisted and tortured beyond recognition. And fortunately, now there are so many working on it. So now it has been reestablished. So if you look at the whole scale, whole range of these claims, I mean, that's just amazing by itself, right? For example, there are 130 plus different claims for the year of Mahabharata war. Most of them that people have come up in last 400 years. Like it started with, I would say, Nilakantha Chaturdhar in some 17th, 18th century, even before the British influence on India, almost right there. So British might be already there, but nothing to do with them. And what Nilakantha Chaturdhar, he was a Maharashtrian Brahmin living in Kashi, Varanasi. And what he felt is that there are many editions of a Mahabharata that has emerged over time, which happens to anything. And he just wanted to ensure that there was a good critical edition, just like what Bhandarkar Oriental did in last 100 years. So he started that edition, and then he made one attempt to date Mahabharata. So that's why I said it started there. But right now, what do we say? I mean, right now in front of us, we have the claims for the year of Mahabharata war ranging from 400 CE. Okay, CE, I'm talking. That's only 1600 years ago, as if like Mahabharata happening or Mahabharata being written. And I'll come to that in a minute. All the way to 7300 BCE. So how did we get into this mess? I mean, forget for a minute what is right and what is wrong, which one is the correct claim. And that's why the Poorvapaksh is important. There is no point we quickly jumping and saying, here is my claim and that why this is correct. What a mess we are in, like from 400 C to 7300 BCE. I mean, it's an interesting mess, right? Very exciting mess in some ways, because when you have such a drastic variation, the false things will just fall off. We know that. So if we start from the left side, 400 C to 200 BCE, I would say almost exclusively, if not, there might be a couple of exceptions. Essentially, people in India, Indian academia, following the leads of Western academics in Indology. But the 400C to 200C are essentially the Western Indology researchers by and large. How did they arrive at that? For example, 400 CE is Professor Hopkins of Harvard, a century ago, let's say. How did he arrive at that? I mean, if you ask him for the evidence, he would say, well, it appears to me that this was written in 400 CE. And granted, he might have given some reference from Mahabharata and why he thinks that matches for 400C. I don't know what that is, but usually people will, in an inductive fashion, they will pull some one evidence which in their subjective judgment appears to match. Okay, so that's 400C. Then many people will say 200 BC, 150 BC, and again that has this attachment to this Aryan invasion. So the whole Indian civilization, the Sanskrit-based civilization, began in 1500. That is the Rigvedas, that is the Vedas, then Samhita, Brahmanas, Aranyaka, Upanishad, and they talk about these certain times, the whole going back to Max Muller time or some other folks. And then therefore the epics has to come afterwards, and therefore first Ramayana, then Mahabharata. So there was no time left, so that came to like 200 BC. So hey, here you go. That's how it has to be. Again, as far as the scientific acumen goes, as far as the objectively testable evidence goes, empirical evidence goes, none whatsoever. Okay, sometimes they have used the argument such as absence of evidence. Well, but that doesn't cut scientifically. But I'm saying, so that's that one group, 400 CE to 200 BC. And I don't know how many claims. I would say possibly 20 claims, but most of them, or maybe even 40. The point is, most of the claims are people simply repeating, okay, ad nauseum, just the date of the previous professor, okay, without producing anything of their own. But we cannot just blame them. I mean, there is enough blame to go around here and distribute. If you come to this 800 BCE to 1400 BCE, these are mostly, I would say, Indian archaeologists. Okay, again, extremely hardworking individuals, but just like the Western Indologists, extremely hardworking. Okay, but missing the crux of it. Same thing actually happened to Indian archaeologists. Actually, even happening now. They are very hardworking in terms of digging things and finding things and dating them. They do a great job. Where they go downhill is when looking at that data and trying to draw the inferences, especially for an epic period. I mean, all the kind of funny things that they have done is they would dig in some place, and I'm talking some great names, okay, who have done otherwise great work, Professor B.B. Lal, but just look at archaeology community in general. So they will find some objects, and the simple logic is, if they ducks in, say, Kurukshetra or Mathura or place called Hastinapur, and then if they find some object, immediately they jump to the conclusion. I don't know what logic prevails there, or what logic is employed, that, oh, this must be from a Mahabharata, and therefore whatever is the dating of that object becomes the dating of the Mahabharata. That happened with painted graveware pottery, that happened with black polished pottery. Doesn't matter if they found some metal object, and if it was dated to say 1400 BCE, all right, they called that must be, for the object must be from Mahabharata times, and the timing was 800 to 1400 BC, whatever was the dating of that object or the pottery. Again, extremely fallacious reasoning there. Okay, let's go to the next one. So 1600 BC to 2500 BC, these guys have used the arguments such as the Iron Age, and since the iron is mentioned in the Vedas or Mahabharata, in the weapons, so India, we have found iron only going to that period. In fact, that is even the wrong argument, because when they were making that argument, oldest iron object in India was found only up to 800 BCE at that time, going back, say, 100 years. Now, with time, now we have found iron objects going back to 1400 BC, 1800 BC, 2300 BC. Recently, I've read somewhere, I have to still get my hands on the original paper, going back to 2800 BCE, and so on. And, if we keep on digging, we may find things, we may not find things. But again, that is extremely unscientific, illogical way of dating a historical event, okay, just based on what you find. But these folks, those folks between 1600 BC to 2500 BC, they did use make of some internal evidence from the Mahabharata text. Okay, so slightly better than the first two groups. But here again, the problem is, for example, let us take the evidence of astronomy evidence. Now, in Mahabharata text, the astronomy evidence is what? Very rich, 300 plus. very specific, unique astronomy observations. What these folks did between 1600 BC to 2500 BC, out of that 300, they have made use of a maximum of two or three specific astronomy observations in a very unscientific, inconsistent, illogical fashion. They claimed that if we cannot trust these astronomy observations, they say we cannot trust majority of the astronomy observations, but we can trust the observations of the cardinal points of seasons, like the winter solstice, summer solstice. Well, we can trust observations of winter solstice and summer solstice, but it's not clear what made them think they cannot trust the other observations. Okay, and because we are in the Poorvapaksh, I don't want to go into the Uttarapaksha rebuttal and start responding to them. Again, they used 2 3 references that did allow them to narrow it down to 1600 BC, 2500 BCE. What they did not realize is that any additional evidence, if they would have used, that would have gone against them for that 1600 BC to 2500 BC. And when we will definitely take some claims from each of these buckets and will show why that would backfire. Okay. Then the big one, and this is a really big one, and also therefore I'll tell you the easiest to dismantle. Frankly, actually, the previous ones are equally easy too. This big bucket of 3000 BCE, the so-called traditional definition of a beginning of a Kali Yuga. And that 3000 BC, and I would say plus minus 100 years, if you just go there, you have the maximum number of claims out of that 130 falling into that. Now, how did they arrive at this? What we call circular reasoning. That is exactly how they arrived at it. In fact, all of them, and just to give benefit of doubt to some of them, just few exceptions maybe, but all of them essentially, most of them started with the assumption of the beginning of a Kali Yuga in 3000 BC, 3102 BC, 3101 BC. They never bother to explain how they arrived at 3102 BC or how somebody else arrived at 3102 BC, and if that 3102 BC is consistent with the Indian narrative tradition. The answer is no, it's not. But that's where they began, because it's there in the tradition, which is a fact. And then what else they did? Actually, in most cases, most of them did not do a damn thing. They just started with the 3102 BC. They tried to test some evidence. It backfired. They came back to where they started, and they said, well, nothing seems to work, so let's just stick with the tradition. Okay, which is what you would see as a authority fallacy, or the religious authority fallacy. Like you can see that in Abrahamic religions and whatnot. Okay, so that's how it is. Don't ask questions. It's written in the book, so accept it. So sometimes those claims will vary plus minus. So I have seen like as far back as like 3162 3163 BCE, and then on the other side to 3126 BCE, 3067 BCE, but everything falls essentially in that bracket. Then we have two more brackets left. Now this 5000 BCE plus minus 300 years, and not many claims there, maybe close to 5 claims, that's all. And how did they arrive at this? I mean, they use again different. They made a good use of the internal evidence of the Mahabharata text, but everyone was not thorough with the evidence they used. And yeah, we will actually go into these claims and see what they have to offer. And then somebody who was trying to do a Poorvapaksha on the other claim in something in the 5000 BC bracket, and actually that person is a great astronomer, by the way. But when he tried to do Poorvapaksha, he wasn't like 100% sure that it happened in 7300 BCE. But trying to clear up the Poorvapaksha of one claim in 5000 BC, he said, well, if you make these changes, that actually it takes us to 7300 BC. So not that exactly he claimed that it happened in 7300 BC, but he said if this particular claim, if we need to improve on it, it actually leads us to 7300 BC. And that's a great Indian astronomer, Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit, okay, whose book is translated in English. I even don't remember the name, but that other person has become so famous that the book is known by his name, although it's a translation of the book of Shankar Balakrishna Dikshit, from Marathi originally, actually. So it was Bharatiya Jyotishacha Itihas, okay, the history of Indian astronomy, and that was translated into English. So this is just a quick high-level summary of a Purvapaksha of all the Mahabharata claims. Now, if we have to divide it, there are 100 different ways to skin the cat, right? So I'm just going to show one way, and in our next episode, if we turn this into a series, then I will show you there are 2, 3 different ways we can actually classify these, categorize these all different claims. But today I want to share one, and it's very important in the context of a Purvapaksha, which is to say, we look at any specific claim and ask the question before, in order to classify that claim. We said, does this claim, or the person who proposed that claim, does he or she show a true comprehension of the problem of the dating of Mahabharata? Does he or she truly understand how complex it is, what is involved, what different evidence needs to be looked at, and how to empirically test it? Do they have a theory before that makes that evidence objectively testable, and so on? Just if we ask that question, and we will have answer either yes or no. Okay, and of course there can be something in between, like partially they understood, partially they did not understand. But just because our goal is to classify them into separate quadrants, let's call it yes and no. So that's our x-axis, if I can use that term. Okay, the other axis is the awareness of the researcher in making that claim, and also the content of this scientific and logical content employed in arriving at that claim. Okay, we can have a very high awareness of scientific and logical background, okay, and also the content into the claim, or we can have a very low content, okay, or low content. Based on this, we can classify this, the left side versus the right side, as this. What you are going to find on the left side, so which is to say, no good comprehension of the problem of the dating of the Mahabharata, and then of course either a high on the science and logical awareness, or low science and logical awareness. Very, very tough words, Aditya ji, I'm using, but they are very factual. As we go through it, we'll say it's kind of hard to read. So the first one is, you will find this lot is actually fearful, dogmatic, and very cocksure. So what I mean by fearful, most of these people will not be ready to participate in a debate. They will not go for a Purvapaksha. They have not done Purvapaksha, because see, if they have done Purvapaksha, they have no logic left to come up with a new claim and claim that it is better than what people have done before. So almost they pretended as if they don't know anything. Nobody has done anything, and they are the first one, or if they are not the first one, they are the best one to do it. So very fearful in that sense, very dogmatic. You'll find most of them, almost close to 100%, began with this traditional assumption of the Kali Yuga beginning in 3000 BC. If that is not the assumption, they use the assumption of Aryan invasion theory. If that is not the assumption, they use the assumption of iron was only available in India after 2200 BC, 1500 BC, 1200 BC, and therefore Mahabharat war has to be after that. It doesn't even cut scientifically as an argument, because you don't get evidence for saying something that iron was not available before this date. All you get is that if you find iron in 1800, all that means is in 1800 definitely there was iron. It doesn't tell you anything about 2200 or 3000 or 5000 BC. The second one is, and again next time when we get into this series we will elaborate, which is no comprehension of argument versus theory. Again, that goes back to Purvapaksha, which is to say, you have to look at what other people have done and then find something that the previous theories failed to do, and you come up with an answer to that unsolved problem while still preserving the successes of the previous claims. None of this understanding existed, by the way, And therefore, I'm saying no comprehension of argument versus theory. They don't understand that they have to show in what way their claim is better than other claims. And the third one, no Purvapaksha of the Mahabharata dating research. And you see what that does. Many people, frankly, actually borrow the dates, okay, of the previous researchers, never acknowledge that that is exactly what they have done. And in that lot, we have people from both side of the Atlantic and whatever the other oceans in between. Okay, we have people in the West, we have people in West, meaning North America, we have people in Europe, and we have people in India. And I don't know if there is any other place, there might be, who simply borrowed the claims of previous researchers, never acknowledged it, and claim it right this time. I'm telling you, in last 10 years, I have seen at least 5, 6 people who are simply using a previous claim, never acknowledging it, and claiming as it is theirs. And the joke of it is, the claims that they have picked are most disastrous. Okay. Anyways, now on the other side, what you will see is that the this is the Daivi Prakriti of a Bhagavad Gita, if you want to think of it. So, Abhayam, so 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavasthiti Dhanandamascha Karmascha Swadhyaya Stopa Rajvam Ahimsa Satyam, right? So, an amanita, a fearless and a humble. What does that mean? The person is willing to take a fresh approach, not be bogged down by the previous dogma, such as like Kali Yuga beginning in 3000 BC or something like this, and also humble in the sense that the person can know that he or she can be wrong. If you ask the folks in this particular right side if they have a claim, you said under what circumstances your particular claim can be falsified, they will able to state it. In fact, they have stated it. You will not find that kind of answer from the left side, those who have claims. If you ask them under what circumstances your claims can be falsified, they don't have a good answer. In fact, they will look at you like, what kind of question is that? If you ask them what kind of problems of the Mahabharata dating or Mahabharata evidence not solved by your date, they will not able to answer. The folks on the right side will able to answer that. In fact, uh, to the best of my knowledge, almost everyone on the right side, unfortunately, there are not many. They have made a list of problems for or limitations for their date. Okay, so that's on the right side. And what else? Yeah, they have a clarity of argument versus theory, and precisely for that reason, they could find the limitations of what they have done, what they could not explain, and they have done a good Purvapaksha of the Mahabharata dating research. Otherwise, they wouldn't have built such a beautiful solution. Now, what are the driving forces? That DF stands for driving forces. The person or the individuals or the claims, but let's talk of individuals who do not show good comprehension of the problem of the dating of Mahabharata and show a very low awareness on the science and logic, the bottom left hand corner, you will find their predominant mode is to be in the limelight. And I'm using this just as a placeholder. That could be limelight in the social sense, that could be limelight in the academic sense, it could be for anything, that they have done something, why they should be taken seriously. Okay, so they have said something, they have claimed something. The one on the top left hand corner, where the comprehension of the problem of the dating of Mahabharata is not well understood, and we will see the once we start analyzing some of those particular positions, they're individuals. In fact, they don't have any claims. One of the reasons they don't have claims is because although they don't understand the problem of dating of Mahabharata, in a way they do, because they have a better science and logic awareness. So I would say they dare not propose a date, okay, because they knew what a disaster it can be. So why they still talk about Mahabharata, but why they don't propose a date? In most cases, to preserve their populist image. In many cases, I would say, and there are not many folks into that quadrant, they have done something good, some really good, tangible work in some other field. But they're also doing some dabbling into the dating of the Mahabharata. They have some views, opinions, okay, stuff like that. But they are maybe savvy enough because of their better awareness of science and logic, that they did not ever propose any particular date. Their driving force is to preserve the populist image. The bottom right hand corner, these people, they have done decent Purvapaksha, but they did not come up with their own date. They couldn't. Okay, so the driving force that we can assign to them is that the rigorous critique of existing claims, that they have done a decent job, and when we get into specific examples we will see. But they did not come up with their own claims, or many times, uh, because they couldn't come up with their own claims, they started criticizing, they started critiquing different claims, and they were successful, they did a good job, but they could not come up with a better claim. So they came back to a dogmatic position, I would say, such as 3000 BC many times. But just they said, hey, so it appears right now the best thing is a 3000 BC, but we cannot say. I mean, more research is required or something of that kind. And the last one, the driving force, I would say, is the best approximation to the truth. I mean, these people have a good comprehension of the problem of the dating of Mahabharata. They have a very good awareness of the science and logic. And so they knew that whatever they are coming up with may not be the final solution. But because of the fact they have done the Purvapaksha, because they are fearless, because they are humble, they could say, what I have done looks like the best one, but I could be wrong. And please feel free to come and critique it. So that's the driving force for that one. Quickly, I'll go here and leave you some time, Aditya ji, for your comments and questions. So be in the limelight appears like a priori agenda. They already know the date in most cases. They already have date in their mind. And I'm talking mostly, if you think of people in the range 400 CE to 200 BC, or 800 BC to 1400 BC. The first one based on Aryan invasion, the second based on the archaeology, the third based on 1600 BC to 2000 BC, mostly based on just two or three, maybe like a 1% of the evidence from the Mahabharata text. Selective evidence, the one that fitted whatever they were thinking. Okay, but they already had a date in mind. Okay, a priori agenda. What you will find, the guys on the top left hand corner, they had a priori bias. Okay, they're already biased. Some people in that group say we should not even bother trying to date Mahabharata. It cannot be done, or still more research is required. If you ask them, out of these 130 claims, I mean, is there one or two that you think are better than others? They will refuse to answer that question because of their a priori bias. Okay, if you come to this area right side, good on multiple fronts, if not perfect. So the bottom right hand corner, no a priori agenda. Okay, there is no agenda there, and you can, when we actually go into the examples again, we will see that they did not come up with the claims necessarily. And the top one is no a priori bias. Okay, now quickly take those 130 plus claims and assign them. So majority of the claims fall into that be in the limelight. Already a date is set in their mind, and now they are only as a afterthought looking for some evidence that might support their claim. But they arrived at their claim just based on their previous biases, dogma, and so on and so forth. The top left hand corner group has no claims, and partly I like to think, I don't know the true reason, but it may be because of their high awareness of science and logic. So they understood they couldn't come up with a claim that they would stand by. And so, but the reason I have included them is because they have a lot to say on the dating of the Mahabharata, such as it should not be done, it cannot be done, and so on and so forth. Okay, which is very interesting because there are 130 plus claims. They could have critiqued them and shown why those are not correct. The one on the top bottom right hand corner, they also don't have a claims. As I said, they did a good Purvapaksha, but they couldn't come up with a better claim. So they kind of backtracked to the traditional position, like say, hey, it appears that it's all mixed bag. We can't seem to sort it out. So until we figure out a better way, let's stick with 3000 BC. That was kind of their position, not exact position, but directionally that's the position. And the top right hand corner, again, this is the ideal place to be in. Not many claims, I would say 5 claims, maybe 7, something like this. And they are different claims, different than each other. But if you look at their process, you will agree that they were trying their best to come up with the best approximation to the truth of their times, based on the available evidence, based on the background knowledge that was considered or taken for granted of their times. And I'm looking at, I'm talking of like last 400 years, okay, from 17th, 18th century all the way to our times. Since we did this whole Yuga enchilada, like five, six different episodes, so I thought I will make use of that Yuga, the different types of Yuga, here in just explaining the kind of conditions, the social conditions. In this case, I would say the intellectual conditions that are here. So Kali Yuga, I can call it here, Dwapar Yuga, Treta Yuga here, and Satya Yuga here. Quickly, just to give you numbers. So from this 5000 BCE batch, plus minus 300 years, um, at least I'm aware of three claims that would fall into that top right hand corner, the Satya Yuga. It can be considered attempts to find the best approximation to the truth. If we look at the Treta Yuga, the bottom one, a good Poorvapaksh effort, like a decent Poorvapaksh effort, you can find like close to 7 claims. Two claims come from this bucket of 5000 BC bracket, and some 5 plus come from this 3000 BC bracket. Okay, so the claims were taken, and they might have ended up with 3000, but they did a good Purva and the Kali Yuga is like a whole big range. Okay, that's that. And so right there, and these are my books, so I will not talk much about it. I will
I'll talk
stop
about
sharing.
it. I'll
You want
talk
to
about
talk
it.
about it? Go ahead.
Yes. So must buy, those of you who are watching Nirej's books, because very good research he has done. And you yourself make a decision. See, the idea is to present a viewpoint which he has done it so
Correct.
well and well researched. So do look at them and see what you like. And I'll say take all three. If you're in India, buy from Subu Publications. I think you did not say,
Right,
but
right.
if
And
you
you
do it,
can they can buy online
yeah.
from there. If they're outside from Amazon, looks slightly covers look different, but if they remember my name, they type it, they are going to find them.
But and you can also get it on Amazon too.
Right.
So one of the questions I have, actually, I was looking at the quadrant that you showed, and so I can picturize in each category certain groups of people. And I'll go the bottom left one, which is
Yeah.
no, no on both sides.
Yeah.
And those are unfortunately the dogmatic people who try to impose 200 BC, 150 BC on India, mostly the Western Indologists or people who have a purposeful agenda to tell Indians their history. Like, can you imagine the audacity? I am
Yeah.
telling, so if I want to tell the history of America and say, okay, I may not have full information, I may not have done a lot of research. Unfortunately, we have very well researched in American history now. We tell them, okay, your history is this, and then impose on them, like just the
Yeah.
way they have imposed that Native Americans had no culture,
Hmm.
and so therefore they were to be civilized through Bible. That's what they
Right.
have told them.
Right.
And
Except Aditya ji, I want to add something. Okay.
yes, please.
So one would imagine that yes, these are possibly the Western Indologists, the Etic and emic tradition, just trying to tell Indians
Yeah,
how their history should be written and so on. Yes, I would say majority. There may be few exceptions of the Western Indologists do fall into that bottom lower quadrant, left hand quadrant, but actually they are not only group to be blamed.
correct.
Majority of Indian researchers, even that can be considered a pro-India in the mindset. Okay,
Yeah.
so very much like internal tradition. Unfortunately, maybe they internalize these methods so much. This whole inductive nonsense, I call it. Just like, I mean, somebody saying, "Oh, why do I say that? Because I feel like saying it." I mean, that's their evidence in a very just like it's a self-evident kind of fashion, not seeing the need for it. That has also happened. In fact, think of it. I mean, I'm saying there are 130 plus claims, and in the left bottom hand corner I put 130 plus. Think of
Yes.
it. So the majority are there. So yes, I mean, the Western Indologists definitely did a what a mess, royal mess for with the Indian history. But many pro India researchers have also unfortunately not changed their style. So their intention may be different, but the kind of research methodology, assuming it can be called research methodology,
It
I
is no
I
methodology.
don't even call research methodology.
It's like repeating. It's like chewing the chewed here.
Yeah, it's a circular logic. I mean, they
Yes.
already have a claim in their mind, and then they go looking for evidence. And when we look at each of them, we will see what a fun it is. I mean, it's a royal disaster.
It's- and also, you can call them coconuts, brown from outside and white from inside. But I will still not go by the skin color. That's a very racist one. And if I
Correct.
if I go by the is the quadrant on the, if you guys, if you can remember, is the top left corner. Now top left corner, comes to my mind the famous, all the famous authors whose books are sold on the bookstalls at the airports in India
Hmm.
and the railway stations.
Yeah.
Wendy Doniger, I won't hesitate to name that, she's the biggest villain.
Yeah.
And Audrey Truschke, like the people who, and the Peter Thiel, what is his name? Peter Thiel, what is some, uh,
I don't know. Huh?
somewhere in the Bay Area, that guy is. Now, these people, they are the ones who claim to know more than the Indian acharyas, and especially they can only fool the already Western minded Indologists who are, they can only fool them. And
Yeah.
generally they're trying to publish to the rest of these books must be totally banned.
Hmm.
There's no Poorvapaksh.
Well, I'm always against the banning anything. But I'm saying we should do a Puropaksha of them if they are worthy of it. Otherwise, just ignore it. I mean, see, person can write anything they want. There is also a blame on the person who consumes it, right? That partly you have to take responsibility. Also, to be fair to the even the likes of Trushke, which definitely fall into that top. I would say there are individuals. I mean, Aditya you may be surprised when actually when we start going into each of those quadrants and start looking at some of the names and what people are saying. That there are people in the top left hand corner. The names will surprise you. Those. I mean, yes, Trushke might fall there, but not even Trushke. People who you would simply say like, oh, what a phenomenal person doing some dharma work. But when it comes to the dating of Mahabharata, they in a cricket speak they get a clean bowled. Okay, that's how clean bowled. All three stumps are just gone.
Or in the golf, 10 points above the par.
Well, sometimes that is respectable, depending on the day and the wind, which way the wind is blowing. Yeah.
And the top right is what is needed. You know,
Yes.
where you take philosophical basis. Don't try to, it doesn't prove your scholarship if you're only there to challenge Vyasdev.
Yes.
Whatever he has written, you may not understand it, but go through traditions, go through your own analysis.
Correct.
We are, see, the if we go there and start challenging our philosopher, because information is written over there. Now you're just doing Purvapaksha based on what is written over there.
Correct.
But if
And
you
immediately challenging, meaning not doing Puropaksha.
not doing Purvapaksha,
Right.
so my point
Challenge
is,
challenge one must, but only after Puropaksha.
after Purvapaksha, like first you understand the background,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you come to analysis on that. and
Correct.
and and your quadrant was fascinating. Like I said, you make one of the best slides I can see. And the bottom right is
Uh,
where you need some faith. You may be misguided.
yeah.
There are people who are achieving it, like some people, they have easily come to 1200 BC, 1400 BC for Mahabharata. Doesn't make sense.
Right.
Like you are,
Or yeah.
yeah.
Or Aditya, what I'll mention, and when we go into the details, you will see that the bottom right hand corner, a couple of things. One is maybe they lacked the comprehension of a science and logic. That is one possibility. I'm not saying that is the only possibility. Actually, very extremely brilliant folks fall into that bottom right hand
Bottom
corner. Huh?
right, yes.
Huh? Now they were in my the way I have understood it. I have done the Puropaksha on them. I like to still, it's a very desirable approach. At least they are doing a good Puropaksha to the best of their ability. My thinking is they possibly lacked the science and technology, the tools. That's something, for example, like when I started for 10 years, I didn't have access to, but now we have access to very sophisticated astronomy software. If you want to do a calculation, if I want to find papers, like work by others. It's just easy, right? Go to Google, internet, PDF files are available, you can download and so on. It was just not possible. I mean, I'm talking of the folks that fall into that bottom right. Go back to like 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years ago. They have done a better job than 95% of all other Mahabharata researchers of last 30 years.
True. And there are some mythologists who fall under top left corner, and
Hmm.
I'm not talking top right. They claim that they're not speaking the truth.
Hmm.
They're speaking
Yeah,
mythology,
correct.
but they're presenting. I think that category goes outside the four quadrants. What do you say?
It's outside, or partly it may fall into the top left hand corner, as you said, because, for example, there are some who have a sympathy towards, say, Indian epics, and I'm not saying necessarily they're Western or Eastern. I'm not talking about that, not at all. Okay, but their position is it's not a history. So where comes the question of dating it? It has some good information, it has some good jnana, niti, and all that stuff. I mean, knowledge, philosophy, yeah, take it, but it's not a true history.
Like
That
the
is their
Mayavadi.
position. That is their position. So where comes the question of dating something which is not even a history? And that's why they are stuck. So I'm saying they have awareness of science and logic, but they're stuck in a dogma. One of the dogma is that it's not a history. My point is, it may be history, it may not be history. Why not give it a shot? If Vasudev is saying it is a history, just assume for now that it is a history. Try
Yeah,
to see if there is a historical proof come out of it.
correct.
If not, you can go back to your thing. They haven't done Purvapaksha. They haven't done Purvapaksha of Mahabharata. That's why they could not reach any conclusion.
And the nearly the third dimension will be people who are doing Purupaksha based on Quora and Wikipedia.
No, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just we never think of that, right? But very true. Which is what you are right. They do not fit anywhere here, which goes into oh, I read somewhere, I heard
Yes,
somewhere, somebody told me, but or they will disagree with me and say, but Quora says that,
Quora. That's
right?
right.
Yeah, or Wikipedia says that.
Wikipedia says that.
Yeah, so Wikipedia, Quora, Facebook, those are their
Twitter.
Twitter, those are their sources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you all, for joining and listening, and it was a very entertaining, as usual, great framework. I think Nilesh, you make a really great framework, and in fact, sometimes you may not realize it that many people debunk themselves by looking at your framework.
Yeah. Yes, true.
So thank you all for joining. Keep watching, and there is a playlist called 5561 BC on the Sattology channel, so you can watch all the videos on Nilesh at one place. It's called 5561 BC playlist. Okay. So thank you all and namaskar and see you next week.